I loved gymnastics. I just loved being upside down. I mean, it's great. If you know how to be upside down without hurting yourself, I think everyone would do it.
I've never heard
I
anyone
loved
describe it that way.
I loved it. Are you kidding me? My mom put me in gymnastics. I was like laying upside down on couches.
What's up, guys? I am so excited to share my conversation with Vanessa Dickerson, who is currently working at ESPN, and she has been crushing her job working at SportsCenter and helping launch the ACC network. But during that time of her trying to pursue this dream job at ESPN, she was diagnosed with endometrial cancer. So she shares all about her experience fighting through that illness while still trying to hold it together. In this episode, we talk about what it's like to work at ESPN. We also get into her past as a gymnast, and she grew up competing at a really high level, but she does share about some of the more negative sides of the sport that she experienced. So that's why she's now pursuing her MBA to hopefully one day open up her very own gym to continue supporting young athletes to have a positive experience in the sport. So she's not only doing that, but she's also coaching as well as a judge for really high-level gymnastics. So Vanessa is doing it all and fighting to keep this sport a positive and healthy place. So I'm excited to share part one of our conversation. So here is Vanessa. Awesome. Holy shit, we've got a lot to cover then.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. I have lots of material for you.
I know, because I am definitely like familiar with your story and everything, but all those new updates as well, which is definitely part of the theme.
Stuff.
All good. You are radiant right now. You're just, I need this positive energy through the Zoom. I'm loving it. Okay, well, let's just like jump right into this because that's such like a classic thing to say. Let's just dive right in.
Let's dive in. Let's do it.
But we have a lot to cover. So you have a really up and down story of so many different experiences and then how things have kind of hit you recently or you've opened up about certain things. So I kind of want to work backwards. So I want to start by talking about what you are doing right now, what your job is, talk about the awesome gig you got.
So right now my life is crazy busy, but for the first time in a couple of years, it's crazy busy with all positive things. So, you know, I've got College Game Day that I'm working on. And that show, it was something I've been working towards for a long time. And I kind of still can't believe I'm on it. Sometimes when I cut things for Game Day, I'm like, I can't believe how many people are going to see this. It's insane. But it's hard work. It's like I was just telling you, it's the hardest show I've ever worked on. I've worked on SportsCenter, Get Up, event, everything. So
the behind the scenes of working in sports television, people who are fans are just turning on a game and watching these highlights like, oh, people who work in sports, it's the easiest job ever. You just get to sit around and watch sports. But talk about all the work that goes into, let's say, making a 30-second glitz or highlight video.
Mm-hmm. So on Game Day, it's the toughest show I've ever been on. The hours are so tough. We're working sometimes 12 to 16-hour days on Thursdays and Fridays. It's insane. You know, I'm tired, I'm exhausted, but at the same time, I'm becoming such a better producer, and to be able to learn to not just accept the first thing that you find and just digging more, researching more. Like we have to, after the show on Saturday, we're required by the end of the day, Monday, to send multiple pages of ideas and research and notes every week, which has challenged me a lot to really dig for the story and dig for the story in student newspapers, just random niches you would not believe.
Yeah.
So I'm working so hard, but I'm gaining so much more.
Yeah, that's cool too. You're mentioning like finding storylines. And I remember when we first started at ESPN together, we were newbies day one together, and we both kind of shared the same dream of being in journalism, and we kind of had a background in journalism. And it's cool that while you are working in production, you still get that opportunity to find the cool stories. Like that's what we all kind of wanted, getting through that PA production assistant life of kind of grinding, kind of doing, you know, some of the bitch work. And now you're at that point where you actually get to tell a producer, hey, here's the big story of the game, or here's what I think we should cover. That's a big leap from where we started as PAs. Talk about what that feels like to have that opportunity.
It feels crazy to think about our first couple days there because I feel like we were all so overwhelmed. I mean, you step onto campus, you see the big ESPN signs everywhere. You see the college football hallway, you see just everything on campus, and you're so excited to be there. And then you start learning all the logins you have to remember, and you're like, what? And then you have to learn all the technology and just different things. So I feel like my first 6 months, I was just learning the technology of doing the job. Like, how do I clip a highlight? How do I do this? How do I, you know, write a shot sheet? How do I speak to anchors? How do I do this type of thing? So I started on SportsCenter at night, Old Faithful, 4:30 p.m. to 1:30 a.m. I loved it. I loved highlights. Gotta admit it. Just gotta own it. I learned a ton. I learned a ton about sports I didn't even know I had an interest in.
Yeah.
I knew nothing about MLB before starting in SportsCenter, and now I feel like I know a good amount and actually enjoy watching it. So
that's awesome.
Going from SportsCenter to I've been on Get Up, I've been on ESPN Deportes, I've been on College Basketball Event, I've been on ACC Network, which was my ultimate favorite outside of game day. I loved doing the launch of ACC Network. There's just so many just badass females on that team, man. It was awesome. Just putting it like frank.
Yeah. Let's put it out there.
Yeah, and here we are. So I've been on a lot of different things, learned a lot from a lot of really talented people. I haven't worked with like a not talented group at ESPN yet.
Has there been a moment where you have felt like most proud of your work? Is there one specific project you did or something where you're like, damn, I just did that for ESPN?
I would have to say when we launched the ACC network, the first 10 minutes of ACCN was on all of the ESPN networks. And it was just one of those moments where you're like, I just helped launch a network. Like, what? Because you know, at ESPN, like that may never happen again. It might, but it may never also.
Yeah.
So just like learning that process and everything that went into it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was one of the most rewarding experiences for sure.
Yeah. And then what about the opposite side? Because I know I have a few of these, but any scary moments or just like, holy shit, what did I just do? Like working in TV can be scary because like you make one tiny mistake, it's like get your head chopped off.
I've cried at work. I will own it. I've cried. I have a designated stall in Bristol, Connecticut that I will go into to cry.
We all need that stall.
We really do. The girls' room is like one of the most supportive places ever, but that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
I got assigned LSU Texas A&M college football game when it was the 7 overtime game, and that was probably my second or third highlight ever. So they gave me the game originally because they didn't think it was going to be that big of a deal.
And they're
like, you're like, yeah, you'll be fine. This is one you can learn off of. I'm like, great. Yeah, let's do it. I put together the whole highlight. I'm feeling good. Get into the edit room, and all of a sudden 1 overtime happens, then 2, then 3. And I'm not kidding you, a single tear came down my face because I was like, what am I going to do? What do I do? This is now going to be a 5-minute long highlight, which in adult world, 5 minutes does not sound long, but in television world, 5 minutes of video for a single game that's like airing on SportsCenter like right after the game is over is insane. Yeah. So I remember being like, what do I do? Someone help me. That was probably one of the scariest moments, but also one of my proudest moments because the highlight had a flashback in it. And just a bunch of other elements in there that I learned how to do that night. So
wow,
it was awesome.
Yeah, I'm like stressing out for you. You like think you're all done. You're like, this is gonna be great, and then it's like,
yes. But you know what? Again, huge learning experience for me. I was never afraid of a crazy game after that. Because I had like a long streak after that of getting overtimes, and like people didn't even want to work with me. They're like, oh no, I'm gonna get a game that goes into overtime. I've got Vanessa. So, I had a reputation for a little while.
Not the reputation you want. You're like, hey, free sports. You want to hang out with me? More sports.
Who wants to stay and watch West Coast baseball till 3 a.m. in extra innings? I know you do.
I'm your girl.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I'm stressed out for you, but it's great that you obviously powered through that. And like you said, made you a better producer experiencing something like that. So you started in Bristol, Connecticut, which is the headquarters of ESPN. Like you were talking about the amazing campus. You're just like looking at all these icons everywhere, but you are from North Carolina. So I know it was your goal to get down to the Charlotte office, which is where I was working with several other people. And so I think, what was it, within a year of you working at ESPN, you achieved that goal and made it down to Charlotte, which is a tough transition to do because there's usually fewer openings in Charlotte. So once you got to Charlotte, though, your life kind of changed a bit. Talk about what you experienced when you finally got to the place that you thought, everything was going to be amazing.
I should know by now that plans I think will not go awry. They will. So I was really, really excited to come down to Charlotte. I had told you probably day one that was my goal. And
Right.
I worked really hard towards that for a really long time. And when it finally came to fruition, I just thought it was a dream come true. Bristol, Connecticut's kind of in the middle of nowhere, and we kind of all make our own fun here, but Charlotte was actually a city that we could enjoy. And for a couple months leading up to the move, I had been having some medical issues where no one could quite figure out what was going on with me. But I didn't think it was anything serious. I was just sick all the time. I felt like I was sick all the time. And I get to Charlotte, I move into my new apartment. My first day at the Charlotte office, I had a doctor's appointment in the morning. And I went before work, was not expecting what was going to happen at all. They tell me right away that they need to do a biopsy because they think that it could be something that's a little bit more serious. I had to reach out to a manager I'd never spoken to before and be like, I'm going to be here for a while. Not sure if I can pull myself together right now to go and have a first day. Then, this part's hard for me, but it is what happened. I was assisting on the ACC men's basketball media days. I had got a voicemail from the doctor's office, and it said, we need you to come in this afternoon. We have to talk to you right away. I just had a gut feeling that it was going to be something bad. I was able to speak to somebody on the phone, and they're like, we can't tell you anything definitively over the phone. Like, you have to be here.
Oh my gosh.
So went in, and they told me that I had endometrial cancer. But this was all within my first 2 weeks. It was really, really hard for me people are seeing me leave early or not there at all. And I just felt so uncomfortable. I didn't even know how to react to that news. Because just a lot comes with, when you think of the word cancer, all you think of is like death and negative and chemo and those scary side effects. When in reality, I was with a great medical team that just killed it. I mean, here I am today. I'm so happy and healthy and just grateful.
Yeah. So like you said, you didn't know how to react to such news, and you were 24, 23 at the time?
Yep. It's a surreal thing to be like in your 20s and be told something like this because it's just something you're never expecting.
Right.
And now that it's happened and looking back on just, everything I had to go through with that, I'm just so proud of myself. It was just such a hard situation. I had just moved. I was in a new position. So it was just like a lot of new and a lot of different and scary. So
new, different, and terrifying, what sounds like a life-threatening situation. You're like, I'm just trying to start my job.
I'm just trying to learn how to produce a college basketball game. Can a girl just watch
Can
some
you
hoops?
not? Excuse me, doctor, I can't take this call right now. I have to launch a network.
Fine.
Oh my goodness. So, well, what is your status now? How are you physically, health-wise?
Yeah, so weirdly, last week was a little bit of a weird week medically for me, but I did find out last Tuesday that my most recent scan post targeted radiation, I am still cancer free. So that's the really great, huge news.
Yeah. Woo.
I'm so freaking excited.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
like one down, a million more to go. But I'm
Yeah.
still really excited. I'm still having some minor medical issues. But grand scheme of things, I'm just so blessed. I'm so happy right now.
Oh, well, I'm so happy for you because I know that was such a difficult time. And I'm curious of what you were experiencing at the time. You know, you got this diagnosis, you're trying to start the job. What were some of your symptoms? How were you able to balance fighting this illness while still trying to hold yourself together and be in a professional setting?
So I don't want to gross everyone out because endometrial cancer is a little gross.
Mm-hmm.
But I was experiencing just awful, awful stomach pain. I was experiencing a lot of blood clots flowing through me. It was really gross. I was sick a lot, whether it be stress related or physical reactions to things related.
Yeah.
I also learned that I would never be a mom in the traditional sense. It is no longer possible for me to do that. So I think honestly, Megan, that was the most devastating thing. I mean, part of it all. I knew that my whole life was going to be different and how I looked at my future was going to be different. Like as of right now, they are still in the clinical trial phase of learning how to possibly put someone else's ovaries inside me. But I'm hopeful that whatever my family looks like, that's how it's meant to look like. But I think that was one of the hardest parts to accept.
Wow. Yeah. That's really hard when you have such a positive attitude about it. How long did it take for you to get to that point of positivity? Because I'm sure hearing news like that is so tragic, but what were you telling yourself as you were fighting through it just to stay positive? How were you keeping that mentality?
To be honest, I owe it all to my friends. And I know that sounds so corny. My ex-boyfriend, Matt, who's one of my best friends, he was a big part of it. I felt like my friends, most of them really just stepped up and were telling me, like, your life will go on. Everything will be okay. Life will be good again. After a while, it's kind of like the fake it till you make it. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I would come into work. I didn't want anyone to see me sweat, even though I had literally just had targeted radiation that morning. I just wanted to go and get my job done and go. And I think after a while, just like faking it and smiling and all of that, I finally got to this place on my own. But it really took my support system to be like, no, you freaking got this. You got this. Let's do it. Let's knock it out. Get the surgery done. Let's do it. So I'm
Wow.
blessed.
Holy cow. Yeah, you got some serious positive vibes through all of this because that is just some major challenges. And you were definitely faking it till you make it. Because, I mean, for me, I was working in the office with you and I had a sense of what you were going through. But when you told me about one of your mornings that you had to experience before coming into the office, I was like, how are you keeping yourself together?
I don't know. And I didn't have a designated crying stall in Charlotte. I probably should have had
all
one.
that construction too. You're like, where am I supposed to go?
Where can I cry? With the snakes outside? Like, I don't know.
Maybe in the trailer in the back, I think that was
behind the trailer probably would have been the perfect place. It's fine.
Yeah, that's a good spot. Highly recommend. I usually use the park bench, but
10 out of 10 recommend. Great place
yeah.
to cry.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Good times. Just had a bunch of flashbacks right there.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, I obviously don't want to dwell on this too much, but can you paint a picture for me for one of the days, one of the peak treatment days that you had to go through? What did that day look like?
I had to be at the hospital usually around 7 in the morning, is when I would try to get it done. And I would go in, get my target. It was targeted radiation. I did not have to do chemo. So, getting an IV and getting chemicals into your body that are strong. Like some days I couldn't come in. Like I'm not going to sit here and pretend like every single day I had radiation. I was like, all righty, time to go to work. But I think the hardest days were just the days I didn't feel like having an IV in my arm, and the days I didn't feel like driving to the hospital, going through all of that, and then driving to the office and going through what I went through in the office. It was painful all around.
Was there a turning point for you?
I think the biggest turning point for me was I got invited to a Super Bowl party with a couple of the girls from Charlotte. And I remember sitting there and them kind of talking me through what was going on in the Charlotte office and kind of like, what some things that were going on behind the scenes. And then me kind of sharing what I was going through was a turning point for everyone involved. And everyone was kind of like, we need to start being nicer to one another and be there for each other. There's enough going against women as it is. We don't need to be going up against each other. And I think that was a turning point for me where I was like, I might be going through hell, but if I continue to have a smile on my face and be positive, like it's just going to radiate positivity. It just will.
I felt it through the Zoom.
There you go. So, women supporting other women, I think was the turning point for me.
Yeah.
That sounds so cliche, but it's true. It changed everything.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm happy you were able to come to that point, and I know that you went through a lot to get there, and it just goes to show like it's the people that you surround yourself with. And no matter what location you're at, like we always seem to think like, oh, but if I live here, things will be better. But it's really the people that you're with. And like you said, I remember I was like, oh my gosh, she's going to live in Bristol. And you're like, I'm going to live in Bristol. But then you had the greatest support system and you seem to have made the most amazing friends. And so it just goes to show the people that you surround yourself with, no matter what you're going through. So you're a true testament of that. So I appreciate you sharing all of that experience, because I know it was not long ago. So probably kind of tough to think about.
It feels long, but it also doesn't, if that makes any sense.
This pandemic has felt like 10 years of our lives have gone by. So
I went to the hospital without a mask on. Like that, thinking about that, like this year in 2020,
it's like
I had radiation where I went without a mask. Like, it's just thinking about it is weird.
Yeah, that is so crazy. It feels like another world, like another lifetime.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Anyway, speaking of prior lifetimes, let's get into what got you into working in sports, because I know you grew up as an athlete. So talk about what drove you to pursue a career in sports.
Yeah, so I'm a former gymnast, and I loved gymnastics. I just loved being upside down. I mean, it's great. If you know how to be upside down without hurting yourself, I think everyone would do it.
I've never heard anyone describe it that way.
I loved it. Are you kidding me? My mom put me in gymnastics. I was like laying upside down on couches, and she's like, please get out of this house and go do it, in a gym.
I'm like, aren't you just like continue to flip over? You just kind of hang there.
Just hang there. I would love to just like put my feet up. I would love to watch TV upside down and just hang my feet up. I'm just like, okay, like whatever. Or
like, I'm trying to find a new perspective in the world, Mom. Okay, you wouldn't get it.
Yeah. You wouldn't get it. My imagination is thriving right now. Let me live. So I loved flipping for so long. So I was a gymnast for 16, 17 years. I got 4 knee surgeries, so retirement came early for me. Did some cheerleading, and then I started coaching, which has just been my absolute pride and joy. I mean, I literally work 60-something hours a week, and I still fit in coaching because I know how important it is to my mental health and giving back to those kids. So gymnastics has been a big part of my life forever. And it's going to be, I mean, I'm a current judge now too. And I'm working to get my MBA to hopefully open my own gym one day. So it's going to continue to be in my life forever.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, like something that we grew up around as kids. Some people are like, I want nothing to do with that. And other people are like, I want this in my life forever. I want to be forever young. But how old were you when you started in gymnastics?
4 years old.
Ooh,
so young.
Baby
Which
Vanessa.
most gymnasts are. They are
Yeah.
usually like around 3 or 4, but it's crazy to think about.
What sort of stuff are you learning as a 4-year-old? Like, were you in full-blown competitive mode at that young of an age?
Definitely not.
Yeah.
Started in recreational classes. You know, your girl loved the pit foam. Loved it. It was great. I loved jumping in it, playing in it. Wasn't serious at the beginning. I think I started competing at age 6. I was level 4, and which is weirdly normal for the sport. To just be super, super young and already doing really scary things. Because when you're younger, you're fearless. You don't think about like, oh, I could probably break my neck trying that. You're just like, oh, that looks fun. Sure, let's do it. As you get older, you're like, But yeah, it was a lot of fun. It taught me a lot about time management and teamwork and body-eye coordination. There was just so much good from the sport, even though I did have some tough times with it.
Yeah.
There was still a lot of good that came from it.
Yeah. So I don't know a whole lot about gymnastics aside from watching the Olympics and Stick It, the movie.
Great movie.
I'm
Quality
obsessed
movie.
with that movie. So good. How much is that representative of the actual sport? Is it that intense and catty, or what? Are there any falsehoods that come out of that movie for anyone that's seen it?
We used to make fun of the quote, "It's not called gymnastics," forever, because most of us, I would say most gyms, like all of us stuck together. It wasn't very accurate of a movie. It was just fun to see gymnastics represented in that way. I feel like that was like the first major film of any sort that like really focused on the sport. Yeah. So I feel like all of us gymnasts were like, we don't care if it's fake, we'll take it. Like, she's flipping, that's cool. So
yeah. That's so funny. I loved that movie. It made me want to be a gymnast, but I was too freaking tall. Like I did gymnastics until I was 8 because I was like 5'7" at that point. Like, no, she's a giant. Like you can't.
Like
Yeah. Well, was that also something, because that's another kind of stereotype that people might have of the sport, is like having this particular body type and height, weight, size. How did that play out for you, and when did you start to realize some of that?
I still stand at 5'6". I've been 5'6". I think it feels like forever, but I want to say 12. I was already around this height. And, you know, when you get to the higher levels of gymnastics, they are really, really concerned with looks and body type and what you look like. And it's still a hard thing for me in my adult years to not put my body type with my self-worth, because back in the day, and I hope this is changing in the sport as we speak, if you weren't a certain weight or if you weren't a certain height, you were told constantly. I mean, I was constantly told I had too much junk in the trunk. I weighed too much for me to get a skill all the way around, or, you know, just different things. Me and my teammate were actually talking recently, and I was telling her when we were talking about our stories, I think we both suppressed things because they were so awful to hear as a teenager and younger, that, you know, even still to your adult years, you think about it and it means something to you. So the body part of gymnastics changed my life forever. I mean, just the constant conditioning, constant working out. I mean, I was doing 2-a-days in my early teen years.
Wow. So when you heard stuff like that, even as a little kid, how did it make you feel in the moment?
You know, at the time, I believed every word he said. I felt like I wanted to go to the Olympics. That's all I wanted. This coach is promising me he can get me there, but he's also telling me that I'm fat. I won't amount to anything. There's no way I'm going to make it. There's no way I'm going to do this. It was awful. it's hard for us to even talk about now. My mom and dad both have regrets. Should they have pulled me out sooner? We still talk about it to this day. That's how much of an impact it made.
That's another dynamic of a sport as an athlete, because for other athletes, you're playing basketball, soccer, other sports that like obviously your muscle and your ability really are there as your tools to be a successful athlete. And yes, there's definitely, I've talked to so many of my teammates and myself just about body image issues with those sports, but adding on to that with any sort of performance type sport too, where it literally matters what you look like, that just has got to add so much extra pressure and stress. And for a sport where you start so young, was there a point where something clicked for you? Because you did say like when you're hearing that stuff as a young age, at a young age, you're like, okay, yeah, I guess I better believe everything he says because he's this big coach. But was there a point where you're like, wait a second, this feels wrong?
I think the turning point for me in the sport was the day my eating disorder started. And this was the story I shared on my Gymnast Alliance tweet, which is a hashtag going around where gymnasts are sharing, you know, their stories of sexual, emotional, and mental abuse. And I decided to share this particular story because I think it was just, if I look at the grand scheme of my life and things that really changed, this particular day changed everything.
All right, guys, be sure to head over to part 2 to hear the rest of Vanessa's story, where she shares about some of the negative sides of gymnastics, the sport that she fell in love with, but ultimately did have a toll on her mental health. And it's something that she has worked through into adulthood, but she has some really positive messages for people who are struggling through something similar. So she hopes to bring much more positivity to the sport. And so she talks about all of her inspiration and dreams for the future. So head on over to part 2.